Good morning and welcome back to our Ask the Agronomist video series. I'm Kyla Watson here with Phil Long on a beautiful November day.
Yeah.
How lovely is this?
This is, yeah, you could almost be fooled that this is November. Yeah,
I know.
This is not typical for Iowa November weather.
I know, but you know what? We'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it every day.
Yes, exactly. Well, a lot of corn has been coming out across all of our territory this week.
Yeah, it's been a lot of, yield results. We're starting to really dive into the data on the product team side, so that's exciting. But been talking to a lot of farmers about harvest results and how things are going, and it seems like it's all across the board, honestly. And I've got friends back in Indiana and Ohio, and some of them are seeing record years. Some of the state of Iowa is really up and down and variable, especially on the corn side. And it just keeps going back and forth. There's some good pockets and tough pockets, and it seems like it's a little bit all over the board.
Yes, so. It is. Well, we're just happy that we've had some good weather this season to get that crop out. Yeah,
2020 has been interesting. It's definitely thrown its share of challenges at farmers this year, and yeah, we got to do the best we can to learn from it and move forward into next year.
Exactly.
So.
Well, today we're going to be talking about residue management, specifically corn residue management, and how that might affect our 2021 year.
Yeah, exactly. Standing in the middle of our cornfield here with the plots and so forth, and you can see the residue kind of scattered out, and it's been shredded up a little bit, waiting to get tilled. But yeah, residue management is really important. This typically comes up more when we talk about corn on corn, so this might be a little more of a corn on corn scenario today. But it's important either way. Corn usually it always takes more of a hit with residue on the surface in the spring planting season. Cool temperatures, but having that residue close to the seed furrow is really, that proximity to the seed furrow is really what affects how corn does early on and whether it takes a yield hit or not. Soybeans are not as affected by that so much unless it affects seed to soil contact and things like that. So residue management is extremely important. We just talked about the variability in yields. So variability in yields, there's going to be variability in the residue out there. Certain fields will have a lot more, and if you're doing corn on corn, obviously this is one you should pay attention to. It's one you should be thinking about every year and how to manage that residue.
Okay, and disease management too, that's a huge additional bonus.
Yeah, exactly. Disease, how much disease is harbored in that. The unique thing about residue, we always think, it's best to bury it because we want to, see things like warmer soils in the spring. The more we incorporate that and start that breakdown process, we can get warmer soils in the spring, and that's good. But you got to remember, there's a lot of good in that residue, as we're going to talk about. So, getting rid of it, we don't want to get rid of it. Obviously, we want it to be useful to the field and to gain us more organic matter through that breakdown. But, this is a perfect time to talk about this because it's like 70 degrees right now. And that's one of the key players when it comes to residue breakdown. And sometimes that's why we don't see a lot of it, is because we don't have the moisture and the temperature. Well, we definitely have temperature. The microbes are working when it's, the soil temperature is on its upward trend of 50 degrees, so it's questionable right now for anhydrous, but there's good conditions right now, moisture-wise and temperature-wise. We've been short on moisture a little bit, but the microbes can still use what they've got to start that breakdown process at this point. So if you've already done some tillage work, those things are kind of already working for you.
Okay, very good. Well, how about this morning we just go down a list of different management practices and the pros and cons with those? Sure,
yeah, we hear a lot of them, we talk about a lot of them, so I thought it'd be a good time to just kind of go through the list and talk about the different ways that we manage corn residue and how things have changed. It used to be it was moldboard plow and a few primary tillage tools, but now we've got a lot of options.
Right, exactly. Well, those farmers that are looking at fall tillage, let's start there.
Sure, yeah, so usually it's a ripper, still chisel plows and things like that, but typically deep tillage, this includes everything. They all do a little bit different. It's hard to encompass everything, but typically any kind of primary tillage, ripper or so forth, it's going to, depending on how much it incorporates, it's going to start that process. You're going to reduce your residue by a good 5 to 10% come spring. But the biggest thing is, it's burying some of that and exposing it to microbes. So you're starting that process, and like I said, reducing the amount of residue cover, which is really, when it comes springtime, the challenge with that. That's why we use row cleaners and things like that to move the soil, warm it up faster, but to get that residue away from the seed. So that's the important part. The benefit to using fall tillage and using something like a ripper is breaking some of that compaction up, getting better water infiltration and reducing that. It's not going to be huge, but it's going to start that breakdown process. So it's going to be a little further along by, early season, mid-season next year when you're trying to plant, let's say, corn on corn.
Okay.
So.
And what about those chopping heads, just chopping up the stalks right away?
Yeah, there's a lot of that nowadays. A lot of manufacturers, a lot of those used on combines. Whether it's chopping knives on the bottom, take a lot more horsepower from the machine, but they do a good job sizing the residue. There's also knife rolls and so forth. There's a lot of different options, it seems like nowadays. The good thing is it's incorporating it into that harvest pass. That's what I like about it. It's saving that. You're not coming back to chop stalks, or shred them up like this field. So you save that pass. But the one thing you got to remember is that some of those, especially like knife rolls that I call it kind of confetti. It chops it into very fine pieces. And that can be problematic for a couple reasons. Number one is we have a lot of wind in our whole Latham country territory. So wind can easily move those pieces, and I've seen a lot of it over the last several years accumulate in ditches or in the neighbor's field or fence rows and get burned up the next spring. It doesn't do you any good if you have to burn it out of the fence row the next spring. The other thing it can cause is matting in the row. Smaller particles can be more of an issue and may not necessarily help your case for warming up the soil in the spring. So it's sizing it. And the idea behind that is exposing it, breaking up that rind, the outer part of the stalk, so it's easier to break down for the microbes. There are other alternatives to that. Like I said, we could go on and on about this, but I know one of the ones I know of is the Yetter Stalk Devastator on the underside of a corn header. It's smashing the stalks down, but it also allows it to kind of break that rind and open it up for the microbes to get in there and as exposed as it hits the soil surface. So there's options. You just got to look and see which one's best for your needs. But like I said, if you have a flat field and you're shredding it really fine, you tend to, and we could pan this field right now and show you how much is in the ditch, and we're only about 2-3 weeks out, but we're trying to get primary tillage done. So got to remember that it can be a catch-22 on those. You're using more fuel and maybe doing yourself a little bit of a disservice there, but you can definitely reduce the amount of residue on the surface by 5 to 10% with that.
Okay. All right. And what about those farmers who are baling stalks?
Yeah, so this is a big one. It's done, especially in Iowa. Obviously, we've got a lot of opportunities for this with livestock operations and even other ethanol or biomass production places nearby. The challenge with baling stalks, it's a great opportunity, but you really got to weigh your options on this one. In my opinion, even if you're taking, let's just say, they'll advise up to maybe 1/4% of your residues, taking a couple rows or right behind the combine, whatever that turns out to be. 1/4% of that stover coming off the field is still a lot. And you're going to see that effect a couple years down the road in terms of organic matter and soil structure and things like that organic matter does. So remember, when you remove the organic matter, just like it blowing off the field, you're losing a vital part of what you want to keep, because there's nutrients there and there's a lot of benefits to the microbes in the soil. So you got to remember that when you're baling. I know in no-till situations, a lot of times they say you can take up to 50% off. But like I said, remember, you're not tilling, so you're not making that process go faster, that degradation process of that organic matter, but you're still taking a lot of organic matter off. So my recommendation would be not do that on the field consecutively. So, if you're going to do it on one field, do it on another field the next year. Don't continually take stalks off the same field because it will really affect shortly down the road your organic matter and how your crops are yielding because of it.
Okay, makes sense. Next up, we have our strip tillage.
Sure, yeah, strip tillage is kind of like an in-between, I guess. That's the way I look at it. It's a great option. There's a lot of tools out there for this. We can walk through a machinery equipment, well, maybe it won't happen this year, unfortunately, but in the winter times you can walk and look at just machine after machine of options, and strip till, zone till, those kind of things are no different. There's lots of ways to do that and incorporate. The nice thing, like I said before, is incorporating any passes. As more you can do that, the better. And strip till is one of those things. You can work it out so that you can put some dry down in the fall. You can place it right where you want it, and then hopefully if you're using GPS, you can come back in the spring and really either hit it right on or get it right where that root zone is going to be. So there's a lot of benefits to that. It's going to provide that soil warming and move that residue away and start to incorporate some of that. So it just there's so many different options there on the different blades and coverings and so forth, that it depends on what you're using to how much you're going to see as far as residue breakdown and moving it out of the way, but you obviously see soil warming and so forth. I mean, even pulling an anhydrous toolbar is going to provide you some of that because it's giving you a strip, but most of these toolbars do a little better job of giving you a little wider strip to plant into and warming up that soil faster in spring. And sometimes people hit it twice, that kind of thing too. But anytime, like I said, you can incorporate fertilizer or something in there, that's giving you that added benefit. I'm all for placing nutrients where you want them. Right. Concentrating them is typically better in most cases than broadcast. So that would be an advantage if you're going to pay for the tool to begin with. To have that option on the side would be good.
Okay, sounds good. And then what about our vertical tillage tools?
Yeah, these have become really popular everywhere, it seems like. Vertical tillage tools, you can pull them really fast. There's all different sorts of these as well, makes and colors, and different ways to do it, whether it's wavy coulters or disc blades and so forth. I mean, there's just endless number of options. I know when they first came out 10, 15 years ago, or however long it's been now, there was a little different setup, but there was still kind of the same thing. You pull it fast, it disturbs the top few inches of soil and breaks down some of that residue. So really sizing residue is the biggest key with vertical tillage. It does do a really good job at that. The other thing you got to remember is it's going to incorporate those smaller pieces, so start that breakdown process. But it's sizing them, you got to remember that too. So you're going to have pieces, small pieces up to however far the blades are apart. So you'll have that in between. That's what you got to consider when you're looking at one of those tools, is how many blades, and that how it's going to affect the residue that's out there. So they do a good job, although there's still tillage, and it's hard to get away from that. I know that's the way a lot of people feel. Stratification of nutrients is still gonna be there with vertical tillage. It's only a couple inches deep, and one big no-no that I've seen many times is they get used when it's too wet. Now this fall it's not too wet, at least around here, but in the spring a lot of times farmers can get into trouble with using them, and obviously you can create that layer of compaction there and cause issues with planting. But for the most part, if they're used correctly, they do provide a great seed bed in the spring for planting conditions, and a really nice, really nice, smooth, good seed to soil contact. So I really like them for that. They do a good job. So.
Okay, very good. Well, is there anything else that you would like to add on soil types, management styles, all in all?
Yeah, so we kind of tried to tie a little bit of everything together, and hopefully this just gives farmers and our dealers something to think about as they're looking at these cornfields. We've had a lot of ups and downs in yields that we'll continue to talk about through this winter and so forth. But one of the things that when I was thinking about this topic is, the yield penalty that comes with corn on corn. And a lot of that's due to nitrogen tie-up, which I didn't talk about too much. It's another topic. But also, the residue. So the residue is what I was focusing on here, and then weather. There's nothing that you can't control the weather. This year, I would say we saw a lot of that impact, especially in the month of May, even if you planted in warm conditions. But that nitrogen tie-up, so the influence of nitrogen early season with corn, and then the amount of residue that's out there, and then that weather in the first few weeks after planting and getting that corn really needs that early growth to be good, even, and take right off. And unfortunately, we didn't see that this year. and I think that's what we're going to continue to talk about as we dive through data and stuff. So just some things to really think about as you're thinking about how to manage the residue this year. We can't predict the weather, but obviously you can control how you manage the residue and how much residue's out there. So use it to the best benefit you can, because it's organic matter that you want to keep on the soil. But just remember that in our areas, the cool temperatures and moisture, typically, it helps to manage that a little bit in the fall.
Okay, very good. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add this morning?
Nope, I hope we have this continued weather. I don't think it's going to stick around, but we'll enjoy it while we have it.
Exactly. Well, thank you for joining us this morning.
Welcome.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Have a good day.